with the salutations. Yoso bhagava araham samma sambuddho vakato yena bhagavata dhammo supatipanno yassa bhagavato sāvaka sangho Dhamayam bhagavantang sadhammam sasangham Ime sangare yataraham aropite apipushayama Tatuno bhande bhagava suchira parini buddhopi Bhajima Janathanukam Vamanasam Ime Sankare Dukatapana Aravunde Bhatigan Hatu Ham Dikaradang Hidaya Sukhaya Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bundam Bhagavantang Abhivade Vakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho sangham namami. Andamayam buddhasa bhagavato apupavakanamakkarang romasi. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato Arahato samma sambuddhassa. So take some time to great practice. And the Buddha talked about this as the process of jayati, jhana. Of course, jhana is quite a topic, and there are different readings, interpretations of what this term means. But if we look in the suttas, it's basic sense of deepening and absorbing into what you deepen into. It's about withdrawal from sense contact. That's a big aspect of it. And recognizing perhaps the nature of the citta, the heart, is to absorb. We absorb in movies, we absorb in things that delight us, we absorb in our worries. Something soaks up particular topics and they saturate us. So this could be for extremely uncomfortable, but the idea is we make this something for our welfare by bringing up heart qualities rather than sense data. So this is change, because meditation, rather than being on a particular point of attention on some particular physical point, it's about beginning with intention. That is the state of heart when it rises up. Intention is motivation, the state of the heart when it rises up, when it feels opening, brightening. So we often begin with devotional chanting, just to remind ourselves this is an internal process of lifting, gladdening, being inspired. It's based upon virtue. So again, we can recollect our precepts, not just the precepts, but something broader than that, the whole sense of ethical sensitivity. And what is it that knows and feels that sense of compassion and concern, conscientiousness? And how it feels, not just what it does, but how it feels. How gratitude and kindness feel. How taking the burden off, how compassion feels. When we have compassion for ourselves and others, we take away the burden. Criticism, negativity. How gladness feels, mudita. When we turn our attention to good qualities in ourselves and in others, near or far, alive or dead, we pick up those qualities. This way, the field of the heart goes far beyond the sense field, because the field of the heart extends in space and time. You can extend it back to the Buddha. Sense of what we belong to, where we take our guidance, our gratitude from. Or we can extend it just to the person next door who did some care for us, gave us some service. So it can be very seemingly mundane, but these wonderful acts, gladness, making this is really what it is to be a proper human being, to be one who does good for goodness sake. We tune into that sense. And strengthen it by sensing what happens on a internal bodily level. Okay, this doesn't mean organs, this means the nervous system in the body. in your chest, come to your face. Is it bright? Is it dark? Connecting it to breathing, steadying it. And using the breathing to steady the heart, a long, complete out breath, long, complete in breath. So it's a very unbroken, unrestricted breath. Measured, steady. So we're entering into an experience of what I call fields. So in this sense, we're putting aside the points of the body or even the anatomy of the body to the overall field, that is the general energetic sense of it, whether it feels heavy or light, constricted, tight, loose, expansive. And the field of the mind, which is citta, heart field, which covers everything, feels everything. It's not focusing on a particular topic, it's just listening to that field of the body. And the basis of the heart is in virtue, in Dhamma, in truthfulness, and goodwill. And there we're listening in, sensing, covering the entire experience of the field of the body. And these two then begin to work together. So we might notice certain agitations, worry, things that concern us, things that annoy us, things that sadden us. Notice the effect in that territory when something starts to agitate, struggle, heat up. Whatever gets heated up or agitated or stressed or all that comes to the fore of attention. Before it goes over into ideas, feeling the energy of it, push, expanding your attention to cover the entire field of the body, the aim, the sense, release. Can be release from further complication, release from identity. These are just forms arising. Everyone feels fear and worry, gladness and distress. Not really dependent on an identity of any kind. Very all-embracing. Sustaining that quality of embracing, opening presence through the entire duration of a breath, particularly into the out-breath, the ending of the out-breath. And the ending of an in-breath, those gaps. So just as we move out this particular small period of in-depth meditation, first of all, tracking the movement of the breath, breathing, a feeling of your body, physical feeling, all the way down your spine, across your body, all the way up, all the way down. You feel you have that physical presence there. It's the body sense door, and the visual door, opening your eyes. Before you jump out into mental activity. So establish those two bases. First of all, keep them steady. and then we'll leave this particular period.
Brahma Chalokadipati Sahampati Katanjali Anadivaramaya Santida Sata Parajaka Jatika Desi tu Dhammam Anukampimam Pajam.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Some often bring this consideration of intentionality, the movement of the heart, the wish, the desire, the impulse, the movement of the heart, and tracking it within the fields of body and mind. Just note, if we look in the connected discourses, Samyutta Nikaya, the 47th book is the book on Satipatthana. The Buddha says, when your virtue is purified and your view is straight, then you should cultivate, establish sati, mindfulness, in three ways: internally, externally, and both together. Internally, externally, both together. So, when we review this teaching over and over again, we see there's no details on what particular place in the body one should even focus on. But he does make this point very strongly. And this is not just the only place. It's generally the theme is one establishes one's reflection on virtue, on one's own, that quality of it, frees the mind from agitation and remorse, turns the mind inwardly, away from external phenomena and the future and the past and what other people, all from the abstract world into direct realm, where we have, so it's a virtue. Virtue has got no time on it. It's got no location apart from in the heart. So it's not about particular quality in the sense fields, in sight or sound or touch. And yet, of course, that quality infuses those sense fields. We bring the heart out through the sense doors. And here we're saying, first of all, get the heart right before we go out through the sense doors. Now, if that's not the case, what happens is sense doors open, and what jumps out is an untrained, unprepared, uncultivated heart, not established in right view, cause and effect, not established in virtue. Even if we are virtuous, we haven't established the heart in it right now. Instead, what we pick up are the signals from the sense world. This is pleasant. This is wonderful. This is important. This is terrible. These signals that we're getting from the sense world, often associated with consumerism or with politics, propaganda, media, trying to bias you, trying to capture you in some way or another. So there are these kind of signals which are rather like mines, you could say, when you walk into a minefield where one of these blows up and you think, oh my goodness, so the world is loaded with these signals that touch things in us. We find ourselves impulsively racing towards signals that are attractive, fearful, pressurized, urgent, psychologically gratifying, fame, praise, success, wealth, being attractive, being interesting, being famous, all this sort of stuff, these signals, psychological signals, just as important as purely sense signals, because one of the important sense bases to remember is the sense field of the mind, the thinking, comparing mind, through which we measure, and we measure ourselves in terms of that mind. We measure a self in terms of what the mind creates. Am I useful? Am I useless? Am I liked or disliked? Am I praised or not praised? Am I succeeding or failing? Do I have a good? Am I winning or losing? Well, these are mental interpretations, aren't they? Yeah, often based upon really worldly values, fastest, strongest. Very shallow. It's good. So, and attention is called shallow attention, which means we just attend purely to the signal that the world presents to us, either on the sensory level, which is just to do with pleasure or pain, psychological level, which is to do with self. We measure ourselves. We have an idea of ourselves. And, and that idea of ourself is abstract. Am I as good as she is? What other people think of me? Purely abstract. Often there's nothing much you can do about it. What other people think, or whether other people think who's better, who's worse, who's succeeding. It's purely abstract. And yet it can have profound, direct feeling when it touches the heart. And of course, this is to do with loss, isn't it? I've lost something, I've gained something. And really, these terms are so poignant and yet so meaningless. Like, who gains anything? Stuff just passes through, doesn't it? If you gain things, you lose them. If you get that attitude, then you lose things. If you don't hold anything, you neither gain nor lose. Things just pass through. But these psychologies, which are based upon a shallow, superficial attention, which is the one, is the mainstream of the world, have very direct effects on the heart. Jumps and gets agitated and loses its focus on virtue, loses focus on contentment, loses its focus on equanimity, loses its focus on its own capacity to open and embrace and steady and calm. And release, basically releasing the power of these signals. We begin to see them as void, as things that have no meaning, as empty, as not defining a self at all. They're not self. They don't define a self. They just are empty sounds. Praise, blame, gain, loss. So one who's cultivated that is then able to move freely through the sense bases, through the sense fields of sight and sound and color and shape, and being praised and being blamed and seemingly lesser than her, better than him, that all this kind of stuff, without getting stuck in it. And since this is the world we live in, we can't really avoid it. We have to be able to move through it without getting stuck in it. This is the point of these cultivations. Well, one of the points, non-stuck, non-attachment to the signals that arise. And of course, these arise externally. We see them around us. We sense them as something that's coming from other people towards us, what happens around us. So the external field of the mind is our psychological world. External field of the mind is the whole sense of the psychological, the society, the psychologies that affect me in the world around me. That's things that affect me. It could be just the people I'm living with. It doesn't have to mean the whole planet. It could mean, because it's a very amorphous world, it shifts. You can just be three of you living on a desert island. You still have the world. You'd get all the passion of the world would get down to three people. Or it could be your country or your city or your neighborhood or the whole planet. So, but it's what your mind, the signal that your mind makes out of all that. That's your psychological world. That's called the external field. Internal field is the self that arises dependent upon that. I feel very overwhelmed. Myself is overwhelmed. Myself is running so hard to try to keep up with things. I'm a stressed self. I'm an overwhelmed self. I'm someone who's never getting enough. I'm a neglected self. I'm a failed self because I can't, get these positive signals going. That's the internal field of the mind. And same thing, we have the body. External field of the body is things that contact the body from outside. Internal field is the body's own nervous system, where it experiences a sense of depleted energy, bright energy, restless energy, imbalanced, tangled, constricted, relaxed. And they're very much associated with each other because these fields, internal fields, overlap. What is felt in the internal field of the mind is a feeling and emotion that overlaps what you're experiencing internally in the body. If you're feeling angry, your body is going to feel tight and hard. Feeling sad, it's going to feel limp. And feeling joyful, it's going to come up to your face. You're going to feel bright and expansive. So see what I mean? Now, if, for example, we're beginning to generate positive heart impulses, it's possible for those internal fields to become quite bright and luminous. And certainly the Buddha very much recommended this because it's for immediate welfare. It also helps to remind us where our happiest state can be, the most fortunate, happiest state to be, and that we have some ability to bring that around. It's not dependent upon the world around us. We have some ability to bring that around. We should not neglect it. It's definitely for our happiness and welfare. It also tells us something important about the mind or the heart or citta. It's actually not, it doesn't belong in this sense world. It belongs in the world of karma. That is, old karma means the kind of intentions, impulses, attitudes, energies that I followed, right, most strongly when I come into meditation, those will be the ones that will be most apparent. So if I've cultivated goodwill and compassion strongly, purposefully, when I close my eyes and go inward, those energies will be to the fore. And similarly, if one has not cultivated it, one has cultivated carelessness or confusion, or cultivated, but that's what's happened. We don't do these things deliberately. Most of it is because we don't really understand. So people do all kinds of careless things based upon shallow intention that leave these, even if they didn't realize it, it still leaves these consequences. People get addicted, they get into just terrible emotional habits, they get into difficult states, and these old karma. And that's what you begin to sense on various levels. Critical, then you get the tension and the agitation. Generous and equanimous, you get that quality. So you begin to witness old karma and the power of good karma to cultivate bright intentionality, bright energies that will begin to come to the fore. This is bright, fresh karma. Then another kind of karma is the karma that leads to the end of karma, which first of all means not being caught up in the old karma. The old habits, we've all started from confused places of ignorance, not really knowing what was going on, just buying into and receiving the messages of sensuality, of power, of money, of getting ahead, this kind of stuff. We've all absorbed that. So these patterns can be there. We probably also experience the reactions to being blamed. We've become defensive. We've become worriers. We've probably also experienced a sense of self-criticism because I didn't do very good at school or dancing or violin playing or socializing. Therefore, this critical mind, we've experienced the results of criticism, our own criticism and the criticism of others. This results again in an intentionality that is fearful and tense. So, and of course, as we open our faculties to the world around us, we're getting these signals which are to do with a world of hostility that we feel overwhelmed by. A world of runaway greed that we seem to be powerless to stop. We're getting these signals coming in. These easily then trigger our patterns of despair. What's the point? Useless. Anger. Want to get out, escape, help. These energies then run through. Since this is the world we're in, and the Buddha's world wasn't particularly peaceful either, it was constant warfare and famine and disease and death. How do we acknowledge that without getting caught in it? Attachment. When you begin to recognize the effects, it always comes down to these karmic programs, these karmic energies, these karma-forming energies, sankhara. Sankhara, a word I talk about a lot, is such a crucial term because it means, in fact, this kind of energy of to do with impulse. It's not just a thought, it's an energy. You can, once you open your fields, you can recognize it. What seems to be just, I think I'll go to the shops today, go shopping or go to visit my uncle, just an idea in my head. Well, if you go inwardly, you'll find there's a sense perhaps of eagerness or enthusiasm or whatever. You feel it. You've got to kind of go in to the mind field to get it. Otherwise, you go out into the mind projection to the abstract world, the sense fields. We start to fantasize about, what to do or what I'm going to bring my uncle or whether he needs this or that or the other, and we begin to worry. And it's so easy to take one's lead from the thinking mind, which is, what's your intention? Stay in that And you recognize that the thinking mind has a particular program to it. Thinking mind has a particular default program to it. That's what it's supposed to do. The nature of the thinking mind is to deal with abstractions. This means what could be, what should be, what would have been, what might have been, what to do if, what to do if not. And an agile thinking mind can probably come up with 6 different possibilities in any situation. Could be this, could be that, but maybe this or maybe that. Perhaps I'll remember that just in case. And have I got all this covered? And now when you have your must be some gadget or app that you can get that will give you a whole spiel of options of what you could, should, remind you of, figure out, organize, and then you can organize. You get a very organized life, but it's all abstraction, right? Because that's all it can be. It's not bad, but that's all it can be. It can only be an abstraction that's something that might happen or might not happen. And as far as I can recognize, most of these abstractions, however well thought out they are never absolutely true to what occurs. Right? It can't be. Like, if I say, okay, I'm going to catch a train and get to the airport and get the 9:40 plane to Berlin or something, yeah, that's good enough, reasonable. But it can't tell me what I will feel as I walk to the car, whether the car will start or not, whether the driver's clear about what he's doing, whether the train's on time, what kind of train it will be, whether it will be a strike or on delay, whether with the airplane, what's going to happen when I get to the airport, whether the security guard will actually give me a difficult time, will they accept my visa? I don't know. I can't know. I don't know how I feel, whether I'll suddenly get overwhelmed with a headache or forget my bags or do any one of a number of 101 things. In actual living reality is spontaneous and gently chaotic. No wonder we have a thinking mind to try and organize it all. And it does the best it can, but it can't actually deal with reality, living reality. It just tries to put it in a box. And you can get a false sense of security. Like if you get enough of these boxes, enough of spreadsheets, enough click codes, you'll get it all lined up. And it doesn't happen. And then we get disappointed, irritated. Yeah. That's the nature of the thinking mind. It's a servant, but it's not really. But what you can do, you can cultivate recognition of uncertainty. Might happen, might not happen. Therefore, you don't get too involved with what could and should be. You just say, maybe so. We'll see. Most important thing, stay centered where you are, keep open, stay with what you can always carry with you. Your virtue, your ability to compose, your steadiness, kindness, ability to, okay, didn't work, non-attachment, dispassion. Yeah. This thinking mind is so significant because it will even predict conversation. So I'm going to have a talk to George. And I think, what am I talking to George about? Okay, I need to tell him this. I've got an idea. He's not going to like it, but I have to tell him this. He's not going to enjoy it, but I've got to make this difficult conversation with him. So we set this thing up, idea, what's going to happen, how we're going to work our way through this difficulty we have with George. How we're going to find a way to listen to him carefully, push aside his arguments, place our opinion carefully and distinctly, be firm but gentle in terms of actually making sure this conversation goes where I want it, so I get to the end result that I want. That's so you get this whole expecting mind. Okay, go and see George. Okay, George. George, I've got a few things to say to you. Oh yeah, fine, sit down. George, I've got some difficult things to say to you. Have you really? This, that. Oh, fine. Okay, no problem. Oh, well, that strategy that we created. Maybe we got it wrong. We've got our information wrong. So what's it like to realize expectation carries the blueprints of your karma? It's like a QR code. Yeah. Expectation, based upon what I've sensed in the past and have operated in the past, that's how I'm going to deal with this next situation coming up. So we come into a situation already preloaded, predicting, feeling that prediction will give us the advantage. It's aimed at gain. It's aimed at getting my way. It's aimed at convincing somebody else of my opinion, making it work for me. That's prediction. And yeah, it's not relationship. It's projecting one's own karmic residues onto a fresh situation. And the emotional energy of that is not beautiful. But we learn to live without expectation. This is not easy. All this stuff has to be, you have to train in it. It goes against the grain. One does have to train in it. Not just to do it, but also to feel the benefit of it. Okay, I didn't win. I didn't get my own way. That's fine. You don't always win. You don't always get your own way. How could it be otherwise? The world isn't going to run according to my wishes. Other people aren't going to be the way I want them to be constantly. That doesn't make sense, does it? What is it like when we have to, okay, didn't get my way? Do we just go, oh, well, life is difficult, frustrating, I have to give up? Or we're still carrying the idea that if I got my own way, it would take me to contentment. It doesn't. Because you carry the same blueprint and you start organizing the next meeting, the next situation, the next person, the next event. And you get bossy without even realizing it. And you wonder why when people see you, they start to kind of, oh, here she comes again. They'll tell us what to do. So, and then looking internally, that's the external. That's the external result. Your external mental world becomes like that. Internally, we generate a self that's based upon control. And this is this self that's based upon control is not going to go very far. It's going to constantly meet things that challenge it, or constantly feel threatened and frustrated, constantly have another mountain to climb because it's trying to control what cannot be controlled. Now, this is why the Buddha teaches not self, and yet it teaches tremendous, intimate care of the heart. And the self is a constriction of the heart. The self is this impression of me that sits on the heart and limits it to desire and fear. That's putting it very simply. The self fears what it can't control. It desires to govern everything, to govern its world. Now, when we refer to this internal field, as we might do in meditation, I hope, okay. So who's there? Who's there? Who's there? You know, when we begin, you might think, oh my goodness, I'm doing all this thinking. I think so much. I think a lot and I feel a lot and I have a little bit of practice. You think, no, I don't think. Thinking happens to me. These painful memories come up. It's not that I do them. They happen to me. They happen to me because of what she said. They happen to me because of what he did. They happen to me because of what they didn't do. You know, they happen to me. I may not be doing them, but they come up in my mind, in my heart. And things in the past come up in my mind and my heart. You know? And so this is a pretty powerful experience, all right. What makes it mine? What makes it my heart, me? What makes it happening to me? What is the me that it happens to? It's heart, it's citta. Now, rather than saying, well, there's no such thing, or there's no such thing as a me, we're just saying, okay, let's look into that experience. And the poignancy of it is, well, me is that which is the part of the heart that's most powerfully affected. And attention and energy goes to that. So it's to do with pain and pleasure. Things that didn't affect me, just neutral, just passes through. If you think of your life, you'll remember the most significant features of my heart are the things that powerfully affected me when I was a child, my parents, my relationships, my school days, my things that had a pretty either powerful feeling for good or for bad, were stimulating, were stirring. That's me, all right. And the bits that weren't didn't even have gone altogether. So me is established on the wave of passion. The wave of where I was most powerfully affected, that's what really is me. And that's what stays with me, becomes me, becomes my blueprint. And what's it like if we say, this is just intense feeling? And now when you're contemplating the field of your heart, you notice there are certain intensities, stirrings, agitations, flushes, constrictions. You just don't need this third party called me. And me is not going to fix it, change it. What is important is to develop the relationship to those experiences, which is dispassionate, soothing the afflicted, brightening the unafflicted, the depleted, as a response of compassion. Dispassion from the sense of ownership. Compassion, encouraging the sense of responsibility to respond properly to what's happening in one's heart. And between responsibility on one hand, which is not identification, and reaction, I don't keep reacting, we find that middle balance where we are sensing awareness, sensing what is needed here, cooling, warming, brightening, steadying, stepping back from, contemplating. We begin to find the quiet, invisible quality of Buddha within our own mind, our own heart, within our citta. Someone who follows Buddha in their own citta, who finds that place, that center, which is both open, not flooded, because it's centered, it has its feet established on integrity, not upon sense data, pleasure, pain, just integrity. From there, we look with integrity across the field. And if we don't know what's needed, we'll at least ask the question, what's helpful now? What brings us into true balance? So it's an ongoing question because every day, every moment is a slightly different experience. You can't plan it. You can't expect it to be a certain way, but you stay in that empty center, the Buddha, and learn to relate to qualities that arise without self, empty of self, empty of expectation, empty of results. This will be for one's welfare and happiness, but it's up to all of us to practice, test it, go with it, see where it takes us. So offer this for your reflection today.
Andamayam Dhammagataya Sadhu Karam Kadamase Sadhu 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 Anumodami.
So let's conclude with the salutation to bring everything back to the Buddha. Dhamma Sambodho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Vivade Vakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Patipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami.
So let us now offer our thanks to Luang Por by 3 bows, please. First bow. Second bow. Final bow.
Okay, well, I have to travel without going anywhere. Well, I hope to meet some of you in the flesh and blood, as it were, but for now, this is how we can connect, how we can stay in touch. And the important thing is to stay in touch with staying in touch with the Dhamma. Stay in the stream. Be well.